Let's do some more, everyone. I'd like to welcome in NewsNation legal and political contributor A. Scott Bolden and NewsNation political contributor Sean Spicer. Gentlemen, thank you both. I suspect this is going to be an interesting conversation. First, I'd like to get the reactions of both of you when it comes to who you think won the debate. We know Trump spoke at the debate for about 42 minutes. Harris spoke for about 37. Plenty of attacks and bait. We heard that in the intro. So, Scott, I'll start with you. Do you think there was a clear winner?
Oh, of course it was a clear winner. I'm downright giddy about it, but I'm on TV, so I can't really show you how excited I am, not just about her performance, but the complete breakdown and unhinged approach to this debate by Donald Trump, and how many opportunities he missed when fundamentally he could have gone after our candidate on 3.5 years of policy. He never got to that until the closing. All of his attacks fell flat. She was able to talk about her policy, about her opportunity economic agenda, about housing, about abortion, about immigration, about the Ukraine war, about the Russian war and the Israeli-Hamas war, and got all of that in there. She's a skilled debater. She's a prosecutor, and she prosecuted the case against Donald Trump masterfully. And if I was Donald Trump, I wouldn't want to debate her again, whether it's in front of Fox News or any other audience. She came off presidential. And lastly, this point, debates aren't about changing minds. It's about expanding your base. Those who are on the fence, if you will. Kamala Harris gave that group of voters plenty to talk about and plenty to move to her side. Donald Trump empowered his MAGA base with his outlandish allegations and racist tropes about Haitian immigrants eating pets, but he didn't move anybody from the center over to his side because he, quite frankly, scared the hell out of them.
Okay. All right. So Sean, over to you. We heard there from Scott Unhinged, a breakdown in relation to our former president. And I do want to talk about policy. I do want to talk about the moderators. But Sean, from your perspective, were Republicans pleased with Donald Trump's performance last night?
Well, I'm glad we're going to talk about policy because that's something that she didn't do last night. Look, each candidate had something they needed to do last night. Donald Trump, almost everyone in this country knows who he is, knows his record. She had an opportunity to explain to people why she's flip-flopped on so many issues. She obfuscated on that issue last night. She didn't own the 3.5 years that she's been a partner with Joe Biden. There was a lot of feedback from people last night that were willing to give her a chance. I think Scott's right on that. People wanted to see something about a person that they don't know that much about, or they've heard a lot of interesting and conflicting things about, and I don't think she gave it to them last night. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a push. I don't know that Trump was actually going to get much out of this because of how well he's known. Kamala Harris needed something out of this debate. I don't think she got it. You saw her team come out immediately afterwards and call for more debates. That's generally not a sign of somebody who thinks that they did well. It's usually the opposite. The team that wants more debates didn't think that they did well and wants to make up for something. They wanted another debate right off the bat. Look, were there a couple of missed opportunities? I'll agree with Scott. There were a couple times when I wish Donald Trump had really gone back and his closing comment, rather, where he talked about she owning that record. I wish that had been more of an opening. I think she refused to answer the questions at the beginning about were our voters better off than they were 4 years ago, and that was another opportunity that I think he could have really turned the tables on her and said, no, they are not. In fact, my record at 4 years of president. So there were some missed opportunities, but that's vastly different than not doing well. I think he did what he needed to do, and I think that there were some opportunities that I wish he would have taken advantage of.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.